All right, we got it.
You did?
Let's go. I love a good win. This ta- this takes us perfectly into what I wanted to talk about today. Um,
Overcoming overcoming obstacles.
yeah, basically problem solving, right? Um, I've been so focused on that since reading the book on like, well, it really is a skill, and I don't think a lot of people pay attention to it as a skill, especially when we're coaching. We're focused on like trying to get them to do something so much. Um, at least in my experience, I've been kind of like trying to get them to do something so much, I forget to stop and think like, okay, like how much of the information are they seeing and how much are they thinking about it? Like if I was to get into their heads, what's going on? Like when they take a swing and they land from that swing, what what happens next? Do they just get back in line? Are they super insecure about how they looked? Were they analyzing what everything felt like, or if they were predetermining an objective that they wanted to get beforehand, and then like analyzing like, okay, why didn't I hit it as nicely to that spot? Are they thinking about the way they looked or the result of it and everything in between? Um, because like I was just doing with you, like, all right, here's a problem. And then some people would have been like, I give up, it's not working.
Uh,
Sorry. It's not working. Sorry. We're not doing this today.
you were almost there.
No, we were gonna
I
go
like
with
it.
an alternative solution of just
Yeah,
using the speaker or headphones, right? We
okay.
came up with we were being adaptable to the circumstances. So that's
Yeah.
what that was the perfect challenge to get us started. Um,
Fun.
I have a bunch of notes. Would you like
I have a couple myself.
okay, cool.
You
So
can kick it off, but I do want to add something to that problem solving, the way we started off this conversation.
but I plan on bringing
Oh
like
yeah.
Charette on, or like
Yeah,
all
really.
Russell Holmes, like all the people that I think I could learn from.
Yeah.
Um, so anyways, I'm gonna do a little intro to kind of let people know that that's what this is about. If anybody's watching, we're gonna act like people are watching. Um, so then today I wanted the big focus to be on problem solving. And then there's a little bit that goes into that, like someone's adaptability, like their perception, their capability, like their athleticism, how well they handle being challenged and how well they handle failure, and whether or not they're team focused and open. Because I think that's a big thing, like especially when you're trying to solve problems, being willing to listen to somebody else's perspective or make sure that you're respecting others around you. So that way, they want to help you and they want to see you win. And then, yeah, to kind of segue into that, like, what kind of person are you? Because I think all those things have a lot to do with your problem solving ability. And then kind of go into, okay, like, that's the idea that everyone needs to think about when it comes to a problem solver, and why we should focus on it as coaches. And then starts talking about like, okay, well, what does that like mean? Because all this stuff has been cool to learn about, but then how, as another coach, could you take this and use it? Like, what is the coach's role in the problem solving situation? And then I got some things like analogies, encouraging discovery, adding constraints to practice to make them kind of go towards desired outcomes. Talk about the differential learning process, because that's completely different, where it's like we're not even doing things that you wouldn't do in the game, which is controversial to what I would say before, which is like, why would you do anything that you're not going to do in the game? Um, so talking about that a little bit, and then talking about how we have to be careful about the way we're talking to them, because sometimes I'll tell you the story in there, but I have had players that are like, they hit the goal, but they were like upset because they didn't look good doing it. And I'm like, wow, I feel like that you think that way because I'm so like, you gotta get your elbow up. You gotta get your elbow up. So they're so like inward, and like you didn't even realize, like, who cares how you got the ball there? Sometimes you got the ball there and you got the point, and they'll still be discouraged and upset. Like, well, we don't look pretty like the girls on TV. Like the girls bouncing balls at the USC game. Like, I don't swing like her. It's like, well, the girl next to her doesn't even swing like her, you know?
Well,
Um, And then, so we don't need to go. I'll go into the details of that stuff. But like being more of a quiet coach, like what does that look like? We could talk about Charette and how he was different, but yet we got so much better. And why is that? And is that an important thing to do as a coach, to be more quiet and give a goal and a well structured plan, and only give feedback when necessary? And when is it necessary to give feedback? And then talking about how I've tried to apply it, like talking about real situations that we've tried to apply this stuff over in the last couple of weeks. And then any takeaways, I try to give them takeaways at the end. Like, yeah, we talked a ton about what does this mean going into the week. So with that being said, what do you have? And I can add it somewhere in here.
I coming back to the topic that we finished talking about last night was away from the coaching, but more so managing who you're working with
Hmm.
in regard to the coaching staff,
Okay.
the expectations you set for them, and the same standard that you hold them to, making sure that that follows through to your players. How that can change a lot of the team dynamic and how the team responds to what each coach has to say. One of the words that I recently talked to you about is mundane, and I have yet to look up what it means, but I can, let alone from where I heard it from, think it's
Yeah.
the repetitive, constant feedback of the same thing over and over again,
Yeah.
and it doesn't help. And why I want to tie it back to the whole coaching staff, managing, making sure those expectations and standards are set, because you two can be saying the same thing, and
Yeah.
it becomes irrelevant, right, to the players you're speaking to, compared to if you approach it a different way or say different things, but still get the same point across. It's a lot more digestible, right?
Right.
Or you're getting two different ways of being told something, but they both have the same message. Instead of just, from one source and the same word coming along. Um, and then I guess the importance, because you mentioned it last night, of how you start off your season. How do you prepare for a successful season? I find it really hard to do, considering other variables that go into. It could just be the club team or a club team or a club program,
Yeah.
but I can only imagine it gets harder the the higher you go in regard to the level that you coach at. But what does a successful, what does a successful or successfully prepare you? Is it successful, or is it just kind of a tentative plan that you set out for yourself? And in a sense, not have any expectations for it, and just
Mhm.
kind of trust it. Trust what you're doing, trust what you're writing down, and follow it and get responses from that. That'll get you to recognize if it's successful, if it's working, or if it should work.
Cool.
But
Okay.
other than that, yeah, kind of all I had on my end.
Okay.
And I guess the challenges we have both encountered with both of those topics, I think would be important to talk about. But I could see your points are very player specific or team specific.
No, we can totally fit that into the like very beginning of the problem solving. It's like talking about what you need to be able to problem solve, right? Because that's all into that, like how you manage your staff and making sure that you guys are all on the same page.
Right.
Um, the word is, or the phrase that started talking about is called shared affordances. And I'm
Important.
not, yeah, I'm not too sure exactly what that means, but like, um, something that you like, okay, so in the book, they were talking about affordances as, or something you perceive the world not based off of its physics measurements, but by what it affords to you. So, for example, when a ball is coming at, let's say it's a volleyball is being served at you, you're not thinking about 85 mile, like, oh, that ball was contacted at 20 degrees and it is coming at me at an 85 mile per hour speed. Like you are observing it as what can it afford to you? Meaning, so for example, is it passable, right? Like as a serve's coming at you, you're like, oh, I can pass this ball by doing this. Or if it's coming super fast, right? You might not think passable at all. Your brain might go straight to duck, danger. You're like, this ball's gonna
Right.
hit you in the face, and you try to get out the way, right? So it's like
Right.
you don't see things for their physics measurements. It's more for like what do they afford. So like what are shared affordances is like my understanding is like what are we all capable of? Like what's like the shared knowledge that we all have to know like
Okay. Yeah.
how to do something together, right? So a shared affordance on a team is like if I run a three, I know that you're gonna set it faster to me than you would a lob,
Okay.
right? As an easy example. There's could be way more shared affordances. Like if there's a tip, you know, right back's gonna break for the short, but just in case it goes deep, middle back's gonna break to the deep,
Mhm.
right? But no, and those those things that everyone can be cohesive together on. Um,
Right.
think that's the right understanding of shared affordances, or at least shared knowledge.
Is this from the book?
This is not from the book. He they mentioned something in the in a podcast about um how a lot of things just kind of get put into this intentions circle, like like oh, it's just what are our intentions? What are our intentions? What are our intentions? Again, you think like I got to be really focused on what I'm doing, but intentions can be broken down deeper than that. And that was literally I just started looking at this stuff now, and that was like the first thing a study I found on, which was shared affordances. Is like okay, yeah, intention. It really is in this intentions category, but it is like how are we working together? What affordances are we all aware of, and which ones do we need to talk about? So
Right.
that way, if the ball
Makes
goes
me
here, we know who's supposed to do what.
makes me think about, I guess, the commonality of knowledge, what kind of
Yeah.
knowledge each player on the team has, and how you guys can share all of that in regards to perceiving information and reacting to that information.
Yeah.
So I guess common knowledge is the common knowledge of a team. Like you said, tip goes short, making sure that everybody knows that if this goes short, right back is moving up, left middle back half to them fill into that deep spot just in
Exactly.
case. It's like everybody, like clockwork, everybody knows because everybody knows, right? That common knowledge.
Yep. So that's I think that's definitely, maybe I gotta dive deeper into what that means,
Right.
but talk
The
about
affordances,
we
that
could
word.
talk about that, yeah, as like if the coaching staff is all teaching the same stuff, it's gonna be a lot, or at least as long as we're understanding how things need to go, then we're gonna have a better chance of getting the girls to do the right things. Because if I'm saying one thing and you're saying another thing, they're gonna be
Mhm.
confused. So we got to make sure we're on that. It's kind of like as a club, me and Tommy went to one side of the gym and they're teaching rolling. Now, I don't like rolling. I have seen it kind of taken away from the college game as like the go-to way to get on the
Right.
floor. I feel like sprawling and just get to your belly, get up is
Yeah.
becoming common, and I can see why. It takes away your vision of the game.
It's
You're
exciting to talk about. I think it comes down to, I hate to cut you off, but I think it comes down to the athleticism of a player.
Mhm.
'Cause, not very many athletes can roll.
Mm,
A lot of it, I think, has to do with their athleticism. And then they not compensate, but make it up. If you can't roll, now you're sprawling or diving.
mm,
And if you ask me at the college, well, interestingly enough, you would think a lot of those college players are athletic enough to be able to roll. And could be their size. I think being a lot taller is a lot harder to manage the rolling and the getting up. And I think the rolling period is
yeah,
already tough enough for a much bigger player
yeah,
compared to like a much smaller. And I don't know if you see this, but I see a lot of liberos rolling and at the college level. They use that rolling method a lot of the time. And, setters too. But when it
really.
comes to the outside, yeah, when it comes to outside, at least, from my perspective.
Huh, that's funny because I feel like I haven't seen it that much. I will see it for and I think again, this is like perfect for, we don't want to, I don't want to take away an option that would help you get a couple of
Right.
balls, right? Because I've definitely rolled before when I'm trying to go this way and I need the ball to go that way. and it's going towards the floor. A regular dive might not get the job done. So I'm like, I'm
Mhm.
just gonna kinda hook it, which naturally makes you want to get on your back and do a roll.
Right.
But I've seen players be taught religiously, like rolling is how you get on the floor and get up. And then they miss some balls because they're trying to get to their back while making
Right.
this move.
They're
And it's like, do you,
prioritizing the move rather than the play.
right, which is part of what we're talking about, or we're going to talk about, like, do they have to do it this one way? Because what if they're forcing a movement, but not really thinking of the results, which might get an error? Like people that don't know how to adjust their arm swings and they're just trying to take rips. It's like, why'd you rip that ball on the net? And then they're like, honestly, I don't know. It's like, I could probably guess that it's because you were trying to do proper form versus seeing, okay, this is not a desirable set. This set is low. And if I do my normal arm swing, I'm going to hit too much down versus I got to kind of do something not necessarily in the norm to get that ball over the net. But anyways, let's start, let's start going through it. Cause I'm sure we're going to bring up some of these things.
Yeah, we definitely
But
will.
yeah.
I'll touch back on the whole rolling and sprawling method of it and the way we coach it and as coaches, just the way we manage the coaching of it.
Okay. Yeah,
So, yeah.
because you should know how to roll. You should know how to get on one knee. You should know how to get
Right,
on 2
right,
knees.
right,
You should
right.
know how to jump in the air and land on your
And
whoa, rain alert.
yeah,
Okay. So, all right. So this is our first episode of I don't know what we're gonna call this thing.
sure.
I like the idea of like thought process. Like this is just the thought
Coaches
process.
that.
Yeah, something like that. So, but what we do know, I got a ton of notes here that I'm gonna be reading from to try to keep us on track here. Is what I do know is that we want this to be a volleyball specific podcast that breaks down the thought process of being a great volleyball coach. So, what does that mean? It means that our intentions of doing this are to try to break down coaching material that is out there. I, in no way do I want anyone to think that we are saying this is exactly how to do it. In fact, we want this to be more like a laboratory where we get to kind of experiment with our thoughts and our opinions on what the material is coming across to us as. And I want I want to get better at explaining the things that I'm learning because at the end of the day, that's the job, right? How well can you get somebody else to understand what you want them to understand? So if I'm taking new content or new material and okay, kind of putting it together myself is like, all right, this is what I think this means. And if you hear that and you're like, yeah, that makes sense. So that, I can see how that's beneficial. Then, okay, I was able to do my job. So that is the goal of what we're doing today. Because I think what we're doing with this podcast, because I think as coaches, that's very important to be able to do. I'm sure you've heard this before that you don't really know something until you can teach it.
Mhm.
So that this is my goal is to be able to teach things that I think I know. Um, and if we can do that, then I guess we actually learned it. So that's what this podcast is about. Hopefully nobody gets mad at us and like, this is wrong, this is wrong. We want the feedback. So if at any time you hear something that you disagree with or would like to ask us to dive into a different side of it, let us know. So today,
Comment below.
what's that? Yeah, comment below, like,
Comment
comment,
below.
share. All 5 people that watch this one, we appreciate you. We love you all. Hopefully this becomes something bigger. But again, it's just for us to kind of experiment and talk through the coaching material. So what we're doing here today is we started with this book, How We Learn to Move by Rob Gray. I was in search of what's the best way to teach things. Like what is the best way to pass a volleyball? And through my exploration of trying to find the one right way to do things, it was like a light bulb moment. I was talking to our old coach, Coach Shred at Long Beach City College, and he guided me towards this book about how we learn to move. And it was funny enough, I was so focused on finding the one right way to do it. It was just so, so relieving and opening to hear that, actually, in his perspective, the best way to do it is by not narrowing things down to one right way, but instead teaching them to do what I want the topic of this podcast today to be, which is be a problem solver. And that comes from the fact that there's so many different variables that go into the game, all games, specifically volleyball for us, that how could you really teach just one way on how to do something when you're gonna go for every pass in a different way. You're gonna go for every serve in a different way, on the toss. Like there's just so many variables. So today we're gonna talk about problem solving. So what goes into problem solving? I want to look at a couple of avenues today, which is what it takes to be a really good problem solver. And feel free to jump in at any time on anything that you think about. And then I want to talk about what is our role when it comes to developing the problem solver. And then I want to talk about some actual tactics that we could do at practice to create better problem solvers in practice. So the first thing, adaptability, right? This is like another definition for being a problem solver is, are you adaptable? And in our game, I think this is important why we can't just teach one way of doing something, but instead to focus more on desired outcome, right? Instead of saying, hey, this is how you do your arm swing every single time, it's like, no, you need to hit this target, or you need to realize that the set is inside, so you go inside, or if the set is too high, that you wait a little bit longer. So what does that mean, really, right? It means we have to have a good perception of the game and what all those variables are, right? So that we can then come up with the solution in the moment. And that's the really hard part, right? Is, how do you do that? It's like, are you seeing, how many of those things are you seeing? And how many of them are you able to process in the moment before making an action? And I don't know how you handle that when it comes to coaching, but I kind of want to start with that right there is what is coaching adaptability like, and what is coaching perception like, and how do we get the players to be able to do that? So what knowing or hearing that, what do you think of right away?
I First thing that comes to mind when it comes to adaptability and getting your point across and getting your players to do a specific task or skill comes with questioning. How are you going to do this? How are you going to
Mm,
approach it? And listening to the response and giving them that sense of, um, it gives them a sense of confidence when they're right, even if when they're wrong, still being, hey, like, I like the way you're thinking. However, we can definitely change that a little. Right? We're going to try this again, challenging them to think, which I already think is a way to problem solve and create problem solvers. It's by, 'cause I personally have seen other coaches, explain a drill. This is what the drill has to do. Go do it. And there's never a moment of really thinking about how are you going to get it done?
yeah.
You have some time to reflect. And I feel like that gives players the ability to go through the drill when we start to be able to say, okay, I recall talking about this. Let's try to implement it. Compared to saying the drill, this is how we're going to do it. Go do it. Now they're just, this is the drill. We're
Mhm.
just doing it. I think questioning is one of the biggest things when it comes um, to that adaptability phase. How are you adapting to the situation through the questioning and through listening to the responses? I feel like you can get, and it also gives you a better sense of where their mind is as players, where you can really like pinpoint certain things that can like make things so much easier for you in the long run.
Yeah.
And that one little thing, that small feedback that they give you can be the reason why that entire drill ends up being their favorite for the rest of the year, or they end up getting so much out of it just because you had that time to reflect and have them think on their own more than anything. But questioning, I think questioning is big when it comes to that.
Yeah, you said something that I think is very important, which is to reflect. That is like one thing that I'm trying to make sure that everybody's doing constantly. I'm trying to get them to take advantage of the 10 seconds that you have in between each repetition, or 20 seconds that you have in between each repetition, because I try to think about how I learned as an athlete. I also just heard on the Huberman Lab podcast, he was talking about how in motor learning, um, you actually don't like when you're trying to memorize something, you actually don't want to just like keep reading it over and over again. He said that if you just read it one time and then stop and take 10 to 20 seconds to just
Forget about
not think anything, your brain will just like kind of like it'll like replay
yeah,
it like 20,000 times and try to like create a pathway in your head for that knowledge. So I'm like, that's very interesting because I remember, and I still do this now as a volleyball player. After I do a rep, I don't even like. I'm like, there's an instant of like gratification or disappointment, and
right,
then it's right to what happened, like replay,
right. Like
replay, replay.
why did I get that sense of gratification, or why didn't I?
Right,
Why didn't it happen? Why did it?
and sometimes it's like, oh, based off of what I know is best practices, like, yeah, I hit the ball too much on the backside and I followed through too much left. I can see that through replaying it in my head. I needed to get more on this side of the ball for it to go that way. And then sometimes you do it and you go, I don't really know what happened. Like, let me just try again. So I think that most kids, most anybody just starting out when they're reflecting needs to be okay with the fact that probably most of the time they're not going to know. Like, I really don't know what went wrong there, but keep asking the question, right?
Right,
Keep asking yourself the questions. What's happening? Because now you're just getting better at, I think, perceiving more of the variables, right? In the
right.
beginning, it might just
That
be,
go
yeah, it might
that
just
go
be
in.
that, yeah, you might just be seeing set, hit, in the net. That's all I saw. As you
Right.
get more aware, like, oh, but actually it was because I left a little bit earlier than the setter intended. And so she set it higher and then it was inside and then there were two blockers and then I kind of got under and the more you think about it, the more variables you end up seeing, which I think then gets you better at perception. Now, perception is a cool one, to talk about because perception is based off of the second or the next thing that I think a good problem solver needs. And it's, well, not that they need, but everybody has a certain level of athleticism or capabilities that are somewhat original to them, right? So, for example, I always like to compare me and Travis as jumpers because we both jump fairly well, but I'm a slower approach jumper. Like, I don't need to sprint super fast to get up. Travis likes to have a big runaway. He's more like springy. I feel like I'm coming from a place of more like strength and
Mhm.
explosiveness.
Yeah,
So,
you could see that for sure.
right. So we both jump differently, which I'm sure is going to get us to perceive things differently and problem solve differently. Right. So we have to take that into account. And that's something that I actually want to kind of put a like test together on like, where are you when it comes to your athleticism and how can we
Mhm.
use those strengths to make you a better problem solver and how can we train some
Oh
of those
yeah.
weaknesses so that
Oh, yeah.
they're not a weakness. A good example of this that came from the book is they brought up a study on soccer goalies and how the soccer goalies that had faster lateral movements waited longer before attempting to block the kick because they were faster, so they
Mhm.
seen the ball at a different speed. So
Right.
even though the ball was kicked at the right speed or the same speed for both goalies, one perceived it as faster and the other perceived it as slower, which I'm sure been uh we've all been there
Yeah.
where we're that ball seems faster than this other ball when they're the same.
Right. I think of myself or getting behind the goalie, position. If I know I'm fast, if I know I have the ability to get to the pole or, the side, the goalpost, the
Mhm.
distance, because I know I'm fast, because I know I have that lateral speed, it gives me that leverage to be able to sit back, read the kick that's going to be kicked from whoever, um, and sit there a little longer and know that I'm going to be able to make up with my speed. I think
Right.
we can both resonate with having that really athletic athlete, and those two go hand in hand. Is having um, a really athletic athlete and knowing that they are probably going to be the better problem solvers compared to somebody else because they know what their capabilities are. They know how fast they can move. They know how high they can jump. I think athleticism instills or make you a much better problem solver, which I think the root of maybe problem solving or becoming a better problem solver is through athleticism.
Yeah, because you have more tools, right?
Right.
You have more tools to use to your advantage. You have more coordination. Um, and then that gets into this, we could talk about this too. I'm fascinated by the self-organizing ability of our bodies, and it just happens. It's just in you. And we've all been there where we've stepped on something sharp and like you don't even have time to really think about the fact that you did it. Like, you
Right.
immediately pick your foot up like super. You don't put the pressure all the way down. You pick it up and you put all your weight on the other side. It's like you adapted so fast without even thinking, and that's just in you. Or when you're walking down the hallway and you're not paying attention and someone's right in front of you, you stop or like take a side step. It's like, wow, I just kind of like did a real life juke without even thinking about it. Just the goal was like, oh, don't get hit. And your body
Mhm.
organized itself to come up with a solution to get out of the way. And I agree that that comes from in my circumstances, like, I feel like it's because 'cause I'm athletic. I'm agile, so without thinking about it, I'm gonna get into these, I'm gonna problem solve without even thinking about it. So, the more athletic you can be or the more strengths that you can have, I think the better of a problem solver you're gonna be. Or,
Right.
the better I think we all know that. You become more athletic, become stronger, you're gonna jump higher, hit harder, uh, you're gonna get faster, and then the game feels slower. And I think that also comes with repetitions too, right? All right, I
Right.
know kind of know how volleyball works now, so I kind of see things
Mhm.
versus when I was a beginner. You're like, whoa, what's happening? Everybody's running
Right.
around me, and this ball is moving quickly. Where am I supposed to
Right.
be?
That's a good point you bring up, and yeah, I think from a more general and like broader perspective of it all, and being able to become that problem solver in a map, whether whatever sport it is you're playing, recognizing the game you're playing, knowing what volleyball, what the game of volleyball is, what it implies, what role each player plays, what their limits are, what they can and cannot do, knowing again their roles and how you can expose the other team or another player on the other team playing that role. And for example, I think a perfect example is recognizing that you as a player on the other side of the net can put the ball right back or right front and know that there's going to be a setter there getting them out of system. So now they don't have, and that, it just comes with recognizing the roles of the game, the rules, knowing what rotations are, knowing the do's and don'ts.
Yeah,
Um, I think goes in the long run makes you a much better problem solver. You can again teach that or coach that in a
yeah, that's
productive way where you can still challenge them to think, through questioning and challenging them. What can this player do in this situation? What can they not?
yeah, and that's the hard part is getting them to do that, and that's what we're gonna try to come up with. Like, what is the right way to do that? Is it possible to, and is it even possible to get everybody to do that? Or do some people just not have the capability based
Right.
on some genetic restriction or their ability to perceive what's going on? Or the next thing, which I think is you definitely can control. And I like to talk about the things that we for sure can control, which is your acceptance to challenges and your failure threshold. So I like to talk about failure as a threshold because I think we can all only take so much before we give up, right? Or before
Mhm.
we're too frustrated and need to take a break. I
I
remember,
told Vale yesterday, bro. we were they were coming after her service because he was just serving her, and she bawled. She started crying. That was her threshold. After 3 serves, that was all she could take.
I think I saw that. I came in and I asked her,
Yeah.
"Hey, you working on hitting?" And I just see tears. I'm like, "Oh, maybe we'll talk about that later."
So
Yeah. So, I think that's important because we're going to talk later or in a bit here about how the coach's role is going to be to kind of put them in problem solving situations, which are really challenges. And if you can't, if, if I can't put you through something harder because your failure threshold is smaller or your ability to accept and welcome challenges is smaller, I have to make sure that I make that challenge or that, the challenge compared to what you're capable of, very small. right? Like maybe if you can only tip right now the 10-foot line, I'm going to challenge you to tip 15 feet, right? Just like
Mm,
if I try to make you go from a tip to like swinging full swing, that might be too hard of a or too big of a gap for you to be
right,
comfortable. And you're going to give up and you're going to get unmotivated. So I think that's important too to consider when either picking your athletes or trying to work on the mindset part with your athletes is we need
right,
to welcome failure. We need to welcome challenges. And sometimes the harder that challenge, yeah, you might not get it right away, but also and Will Smith said it before on a an interview. It's like the best things in life are on the other side of those things that we fear the most. Like he talked about it with skydiving. He was terrified, but once he jumped, it was like, wow, this was euphoric. I was so scared of it. It was so challenging, but I did it, and it was like, wow. I'd been there with like when I remember learning to hit. Like I was so determined to just like hit a ball over the net, and I would hit like in the net, out of bounds. And it's like, dang it, like I just want to get that. I want to hit that target. And then I cared more about hitting the target and finishing the challenge than I did that I was messing up. And I think I had a good threshold when it came to failure. I might get frustrated and like, like, oh, I'll get mad, but I never wanted to give up on the challenge or try less. I shouldn't say never. It took me a while before I kind of got unmotivated with the attempts, but there were definitely
right.
those days where I was like, all right, we'll just, let's try again tomorrow. I'm not in the right mindset anymore. Maybe we can do it tomorrow. So
But
I think that's
I
important.
guess my point on that, and talking back to my player, Valeria experience yesterday during the drill was as a coach, being able to set up a drill where it's challenging a player, exposing them to their weaknesses and their ability to figure it out, their ability to like recognize and not just respond to it, but respond in a way that's going to get like themselves and their team, or at least put them in the right direction, right? Um, and it's challenging, and I think through that challenge and for as emotionally taxing that as it may be, um, I think that's where a lot of these players end up being those or being exposed to that problem solving and becoming that better problem solver. I think it'd be a disservice to the players if we weren't challenging and like letting the game expose their flaws or their inability to read the game a little better.
Yeah.
And I think through these challenges where they feel like they're in a sense being attacked or being targeted, that you expose them to what it takes and what their role on the team implies. You know,
Yeah.
they're gonna come after you.
Yeah. Yeah.
How are you gonna solve this problem?
Right. I think that's very important. When you're
And
saying it,
again, it's unintentional. Like I did not like I didn't tell Cassie surfer.
right.
I didn't tell my other player Cassie surfer. The drill didn't imply serve the outside hitter, which she was. It was the team recognizing we aced her once, let's try this again. So again, also puts the other team on, it gives them leverage and it gives them the sense of, like we're figuring something out here. We're solving the puzzle.
Yeah, they solved
You
the
know,
problem on knowing who to
exactly.
serve.
Exactly. So, you see that problem solving without even talking about it.
Yeah.
How you approach the situation, how your coaching ability to expose them to those kind of ways of figuring out. And again, very, I wouldn't say biased, but they know the kind of player she is.
Yeah.
They're teammates, so it's only right for them to kind of, it's kind of a given. But however, because of the drill, it's just exposed,
Yeah.
and it's challenging for a player like Vande. But I think in the long run, she's going to come back, and they're going to come out. And this time around, I think it's going to be a completely different story.
Yeah. And you kind of get to guide that narrative a little bit too, because I've seen coaches where that player is under that pressure and now they're trying to problem solve. And then the coach is just like, come on, and
Right,
there's
right.
another
Or
pressure.
or they'll step in and like fix it for them. Let's push her off the passing line.
Right.
Let's sub her out. No, 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 no. Let's keep her in. Have her figure it out.
Or they tell them like, this is what you have to do. This is what you have to do.
Right,
You do
right,
it like
right,
this, you have to do it
right.
like this.
That's
What if
it.
it's a different ball? I've been there before, which is like, oh dang, I screwed that up because
Right,
I told her how to fix the last pass, like what I would have done, but then the next serve was not the same as the last one, and she tried to do what I told her, And
Right.
now I'm like, oh, dang. So that's wrong to say what you should have done
Yeah.
instead, which changed me going like, and I try to stay away from that, like push, push, push. Except some players, again, this is knowing your players, like, and how they like to be motivated. Because some players will be like, "Come on, you got it, let's go." They want to be pumped up like that, and other players are having an anxiety attack when they get pushed into that corner, and
Right.
you kind of get to guide it. Like, it's okay. Just remember, like, we're here to get better. What are you
Mm.
seeing? What's happening, and try to like give
Yeah.
them more of a like tunnel on like, okay, I'm supposed
Yeah.
to be focusing on getting better. It's okay that I got aced. What am I seeing? Instead of freaking out, what am I seeing? Maybe I can get this next one. So I think that's a good point that you brought up is like as coaches, we got to make sure that we're not another attacking force.
Right.
We're like
Right. Or and it's
helping them through it.
so tempting
I know.
doing something about it.
Right.
Something for them and do this and that. Here, let's try this different. But letting them figure it out on their own and stepping away and just being that person that gets to like binge that, like watch the way they respond. Also gives you the ability as a coach to give them feedback. Get to sit back and see, well, do you recall how you responded to this? Do you recall what happened and how you responded? And then they get to reflect on it even more after that. I'm pretty sure if you give them that answer, it'd be like, yeah, I was bad. But then it was good because you told me to do this. I'm like, yeah, because I told
Yeah.
and I give you the answer. You want them to figure it out. Again, it comes back to the first thing we brought up and I started talking about was the questioning, like why did this happen? You know,
Right.
talk to me about this. How can we figure this out a little sooner? Or how can we make a change a little earlier before they keep coming after us? So,
Yeah.
and I was waiting for her to tell the libero next to her and the other outside, take half the court, like get over. I was gonna do it myself, but I said no, have her figure it out.
Yeah.
She didn't figure it out, sub her out. But it was a learning experience, you know, like part of
Yeah.
becoming that player.
I think that
Or
I think that those are defining moments for players too, more so in games, in competition where the pressure is extremely real to them. Like,
right,
what do you do? Let's say somebody gets hurt and you and somebody else were getting the majority of the sets, and now you're the only person on the court and you're not having the best day. And now you're the service
exactly,
target and they know it's coming to you, and you see the blockers like pushing towards your side of the net, getting ready to put a nice block on you every single time. What do you do? You know,
right,
are you gonna break or are you gonna
right,
problem solve it? And how many times could you get stuffed or dug before you're like, oh, I can't take this anymore and just start crying on the court? And then if you do break, what do you go home and think about? Do you think you're a
right,
failure? Or because this happened to me plenty of times, like I'd want to quit because conditioning, mainly conditioning, was so hard in high school that I had plenty of days where I was like, what if we all just didn't come back tomorrow? Like it's too hard. Like they'll eventually stop making us work so hard. And everybody came back. Everyone was like, yeah, we're not going to come back. But everybody showed up. Man, as hard as this is, I'm still going to show up. So, which means I
yeah.
better figure it out.
It says a lot when you step out of one of those practices. Where you're like, "Ah, oh
Oh, yeah.
man, I'm not coming back. This is tough. This is hard." And it says a lot about the resiliency that you have as an athlete, and you start to build into
Yeah.
yourself. It's recognizing, and it just builds that confidence of, I did it once, I can do it again.
Right. So I think that all goes into this idea as a problem solver. You got to get like this is a skill that you have to get better at, which is accepting challenge and having a bigger failure threshold. And I feel like a lot of that you do a whole episode on just failure. Like
Yeah,
the best thing you could possibly do is just buy into the idea that failures are how you learn. And
exactly.
then you get over it. It's like, let's go. Let's
Huh?
go more. I'm gonna solve more
Right.
problems the more that I fail. So that's a big one. The last one that I want to talk about is this idea of being a problem solver. And you were kind of mentioning it in that passing situation with Val. Like we were looking at it from an individualized approach, but there could have been a team solution
Oh
to
yeah.
fixing that problem too, which tells you that dynamic of the team and like how focused you are on not just yourself, but on everybody as a whole. Um, I think that that can help you problem solve, and also being open to your teammates giving you feedback, or open to the idea like, let me carry some of that weight. As an
Mhm.
outside, I love that. Like, I'm okay not passing. If I have a strong
Right.
libero next to me and the server is not super aggressive, hey, I'm
Take the
gonna
court.
go immediately.
Yeah,
I'm gonna worry about getting the kill. This is
exactly.
your area. You're a great passer. I'm gonna go take it all the way to the line. I'm not even gonna try to touch it. And I've been okay with that. And that is problem solving. Yes, I didn't pass the ball, but did we figure out how to get the pass? Right? So are you team focused as well as being a problem solver? And are you open to solutions that kind of put you in a back seat sometimes? Or even not even on the court sometimes. That is such a problem that, again, we could do a whole episode on roles, like player roles, and what does it mean to be on a team? And is it about you winning, or is it about being on being in a winning program? And if your job
Right.
is to be on the bench and be a cheerleader and really motivate your teammates, and if someone comes off the court down, you're there to pick them up, and then you guys all celebrate together. And then, more importantly, when you're at practice, your job is to push everybody so hard that whoever stands out the most gets to do the playing time. Right? It's like, and then you tip your hat to them, like, all right, you outworked me today. You deserve to play, and be okay with it. So there's a whole thing when it comes to being a problem solver and being team focused and open and understanding roles. And then lastly, knowing or being understanding what kind of person you are and developing yourself to be a better person that becomes a problem solver, right? Because we know people that can kind of be blamey at practice, and it's like that is not a good that is not a good thing to look at. Well, it was this person's fault, or it was this person's fault. I know that some things aren't. Yeah, nobody, like an outsider's not going to be like that was Josh's fault, right? That's not what I'm saying. But as soon as you go, I could have done this to better that situation, even though nobody would blame me. I could have done something a little bit better. Now you have options, and now you can adjust. And you can't feel helpless. Well, you don't have to feel helpless because, oh, it was so and so's fault. I had nothing to do with that. We guess
Yeah.
we lost the point. It's like that's not a healthy kind of person to be. You want to feel like you have control and finding ways to help, even if it's not your
Yeah.
fault, are important. So,
Think,
yeah, go ahead. I want you to
briefly
elaborate on that.
briefly said it, you briefly mentioned it, but recognizing your strengths and your weaknesses,
Yeah.
and being able to reflect on them and recognize and be okay with specifically on my team, me having to talk them through the fact that you are not the best at defense
Mhm.
and you need to come in with the thought of it's gonna be ugly. It's not gonna go to target. You're not gonna get it up. But are you gonna continue to challenge yourself to come back and try it again? Or is that one rep where you don't get it to target? Yeah, you made the right move, still didn't go to target. Is that gonna defeat you?
Yeah.
Are you gonna continue to keep it a weakness? I guess the expectations that a lot of players come in with when it comes to a specific skill and pertains to a specific skill, their expectations are like over the roof. And we talk about comparing and contrasting yourself to other players on your team or a different team. And it needs to look like this, and it's not looking like this. I'm a terrible volleyball player.
Mm.
And being able to reflect on that and acknowledge and recognize and accept that today I'm going to fail and it's not going to be ugly. And if you come in with that mindset, when you come in with that mindset and you do get that play and you do get that hit, you do get that block, your response to that is going to be so much more, um, you're going to get so much more from it compared to like consistently just defeating yourself because you have set this bar for yourself so high.
Mhm.
I'm not saying set the standards low,
Yeah.
only if you do recognize that it has to be this low and we have to build it up.
Right.
Compared to if you already know you're this good, keep pushing for that high expectation, you know? But for those players who are lacking a specific skill, they have to be able to recognize, I'm not good at it. I'm going to try to do the best at it. I'm going to continue to give the effort that it takes to be the best at it, but I have to be okay with it not going the way I want it to or the way it
Yeah.
should go.
I think this is a good point to come back to capability. Because I think when we think of capability, we think of like things like how tall you are, how hard you can hit, and stuff like that. But your your circumstances change daily, right? Some days, and this was like a thing for me, a good like situation to talk about perception was some days I'd come into the gym and the net would look low. And it was always on days that my legs felt really good. Like, because I knew I was going to jump high that day. So the net felt lower. And I had different options on how to score points and get blocks when I could jump higher, when I could jump well, when my legs felt faster. And then there were days where you had a hard leg day or you jumped a ton during the week and that net feels super high. Well, now I got to
Right.
come up with different solutions. I think that's so important to mention to try to get
Mhm.
kids to realize that is like, no, some days you're going to have good legs and you could jump high and you could
Right.
hit or down. But what if you're not having a good jumping day or you feel sick and your what's the word I'm looking for? Your intensity and your energy levels are just super low and you know, like you can't really, you're not that aware. It's like, do you just not,
Lethargic.
yeah, do you just not play that day? Do you
Right.
just not give any effort or do you come up with solutions? Like for me, not a great day, feeling tired, knee hurts, something like that. I'm going to work on my shots today. I'm not going to max it out. I'm going to stay pretty low. I'm going to try to get some reps at seeing how the blockers line up and seeing if I can do some certain shots around the block. I think it's very important to know where you're at on every day or how you're feeling because you're not going to be at 100% every day. You're a different person every day. You're going to have to come up with different solutions every day. And that also ties into what do you do when you get a bad set? I get very upset with players because sometimes they'll get a bad set and they'll just do the most simple thing like, ah,
Mhm.
wasn't good. I'm not even going to try. I'm just going to tip
Right.
it like just in, or sometimes not even in, like in the net. It's like,
Yep.
I need you to make the best out of that situation.
Right. Again, comes back to recognizing the game and recognizing no matter what opportunity you get, we have to try to get a point as we send this ball over on this big touch.
And that's where the
Second
greatest
percent
plays that's where the greatest plays
happen.
come
Yeah.
from. That's where windmills come from, where
Yeah.
you go reverse behind the back.
Right.
Like,
Right.
'cause you saw a bad set and instead of giving up on it, you're like, "Oh, what if I just, maybe if I just," and
Yep.
then everyone's like, "What? Where did that come from?" And they look at you like, What made you
Like
do
the
that?" You're like,
right.
"I don't know."
Problem solving, baby.
Just instincts kicked in and that's
Right.
what my body did. Same thing
Right.
with diving. Sometimes you make crazy dives and you're not even sure, like, how the heck did that ball get to the target? I didn't even really see the ball, but my
Right.
body just moved and it went up. Or when you run for the ball that's super far in the corner, like, I didn't even think I could run that
I didn't. Right.
fast
I
or
don't.
get to that ball, and I got to it. So just because you feel like you're in a bad situation doesn't mean that there's not a way to win when you win out of that or get out of that situation by getting the point still, or at least keeping it in play and letting the ball live for another day, but not just letting it live by freeing it over to the libero, but let it live by like, okay, well, maybe I can't get a point with this, but how can I make sure that they have a really hard time with it?
Right.
Take the setter out, put it deep in
Get
the
it
corner,
out. Yep.
tip
Get
it,
him out of the
tip it to the middle, try to take the
quick
best
and
hitter out of
scramble.
position. So
Uh-huh.
I think that's another. We'll leave the problem solving overview there.
Right.
To recap, we talked about to be a good problem solver, you got to be adaptable. You got to be willing to change with the circumstances. You have to focus on your perception and reflecting on what you're seeing and what just happened and making those adjustments. You have to understand your capabilities and your level of athleticism and understand that those things change regularly and you need to come up with different solutions as those things change. You have to be more accepting of challenges and you have to try to improve your failure threshold so that way you can be challenged harder, therefore get better faster and get more reps before your motivation plummets. You got to be team focused. And you got to be open to different solutions that might exclude you or open to certain situations where you might have to be the guy that gets set even when you don't feel like you're in your best. It's like my team needs me right now. I got to come through and I got to come with a solution fast. And then remember to evaluate what kind of person you are. And I think that that's important that you're always trying to improve. You're always looking into ways to self-improve, whether that's reading or watching podcasts or talking to talking to a therapist even. I think a lot of people grow from talking to specialists. You don't
Yeah.
always have to be in a really bad place to go talk to somebody that knows how the brain works and best practices to have a good life and to be a good athlete. There's sports
Right.
psychologists that can help with that. So trying to improve on all those fronts. Now I want to talk about coaches' roles, not just a coach and player dynamic, but a head coach and staff dynamic and player dynamic and how those things intertwine and bounce back and forth with each other, and what that looks like. So the first thing that I think we should talk about, which was, I think I'll let you introduce it, as the overall staff and what that looks like and going into a season, how we should be thinking as a unit.
Well, let's start with the head coach.
Uh-huh.
He is definitely the person who's setting the expectations, the setting the tone, the culture that you're going to be going into the season with, and you're supposed to maintain. While the assistant coach helps you facilitate that,
Mhm.
helps you be the one to explain things in a much thorough detail. And yeah,
Y
I mean, you
It's
know how
tough,
that.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
So that I'll give you my take on it. Uh, I feel like we'll say going into a season, so that way you have, like, a structure going into it, right? We need a structure. I feel like at the end of the day, I like to lead, from the front, like, in the sense, like, I wanna help everybody get there. I wanna help everybody get better, and that necessarily isn't, why I said help from the front is because I feel like people could be in situations where they're leading from, like, this pedestal where it's more like a tyrannical,
right,
leadership of, "This is how you do it. This is what we're all doing. Buy in," or and that's it. And I don't think that that's that problem-solving environment where people get to grow. Uh, the way that we run things at our club and the way I coach at high school is I wanna develop those coaches that wanna eventually be head coaches.
right,
And I feel like if I just set all the protocols, not only do the coaches that are helping me not grow, but I don't think the players grow if I'm setting the protocols for them too. So first thing for me is to ask everybody, including the coaches at separate times, sometimes at the same times, what do we want to get done this year? Which already starts the problem solving journey.
mhm,
As an assistant coach, what do you want to get better at? And then as a team, what are our goals this year? Like, do we want to
right,
win? Because then I can kind of fill in the gaps that they're not too sure about. It's like, well, how do we get better?
mhm,
Well, this is what if you want to win a championship, this is what the best look like. This is how they do it, and this is what we're gonna have to do to get there. And then you go, okay, all right, that sounds like a good goal. We can all buy in on these things. So
right,
I like to think of myself as more like the head coach is more like the wisdom guy. He's the one that can kind of like I'm not gonna just give you all the answers, but I know
yeah,
how to get you how to kinda guide you there, and that includes the assistant coaches and the players, like,
absolutely.
I
That's
gotta know the assistant coaches and what they need to get better at so that I could challenge them too, because I
right,
want them to grow. You got a guy, you know, I'm gonna talk about Tony because I think he's doing a great job. You got a guy like Tony who struggles with the language barrier, but is so determined like, he's so determined to, like, get better,
right,
but he
yeah,
doesn't really
uh-huh,
vocalize
yeah,
it.
right,
So when I'm with them, at least I'm like, "Hey, Tony, you're gonna teach this," and you see him get uncomfortable, but that's where you grow, is when you get
right,
uncomfortable, but he accepts the challenge and therefore will grow. So I think that's a great situation. I do that with Shayna and Brandy as well. I know where they kind of feel inferior in some areas, and I'm like,
mhm,
"Nope, I'm not. It's not me, and then you guys, and then the team." It's like, if anything,
yeah,
I wanna be at the
yeah.
bottom of that
I think
leadership
that
structure.
is one of the biggest things as a head coach, and it's so easy to fall into the trap of I'm the head coach, head coach.
Right.
I run this team. I do this. You guys
Mhm.
follow. And again, you are more than you have all the ability to do so.
Yeah.
I think there you lose the buy-in in so much of that, and you detach yourself and pretend again, putting yourself in that pedestal really separates you from the people who you're trying to help out and bring along with you instead. And one of the things that one of which you mentioned is the buy-in, right? Like how do you create that buy-in as a head coach? And I think that's where the head coach really comes into play, rather than the assistants on the team. It's getting that buy-in and making the ones who you are helping your team, your assistant coaches. I think your assistant coaches definitely see this a lot more than your players. However, your players can definitely see it too. Is what are you doing to prepare? How are you preparing? What are the little side comments or conversations you're having with your players that are creating the sense of comfortability and letting them know that this is a safe environment. This is a person who I can trust. This is a person who cares about me. The intentions that this person has for me are nothing but positive. I know this person wants the best for me, and do the buy-in. And you talk about it too, right? Doing the dirty work, shagging balls with the team, getting into a drill, sweating with them, working out with them, getting in a couple reps with them, just showing that you are just bought in as you want them to buy into you or
Mhm.
your whatever it is you're trying to create.
Right.
Um, and I strongly believe through your preparation, how you show up to practice, um, how you greet everybody, how you dismiss everybody. The conversations you can have with some players that can just enlighten them can be so insightful that they can be like, damn, this person wants this for me. I didn't even think I can do that. I didn't even think, dude,
Mm.
I was ever gonna be like told this.
Yeah.
Again, through these conversations, you've been creating that mind, through that how prepared you come into practice. Again, I
Yeah.
think that goes a long way, and it doesn't really take all that much work, to be prepared
Yeah.
and to know what you're gonna come into each practice, knowing, what you wanna get done. But one of the things I share with a lot of my teams is we're here for 2 hours, we're here for an hour, we're here for 3 hours. We are gonna make every single minute count. I'm not gonna waste your time, and I hope you don't waste mine. I
Right.
think that's one of the biggest things, and once you make that point across, perfect example is last practice, I told the 14th after we go through all our position tutoring to receive, I'm like, okay, we're gonna implement everything right now in this class, drill. Um, we just practice our middles running quicks. Outside, you guys are finding your toolbox, finding tools, whatever circumstance you're in. Listen, I don't want to start playing and all of this goes out the window and we're playing bad volleyball.
Mhm.
I used a different word for bad, but like I'm not playing bad volleyball. We're not doing that. And everybody just completely changed the, okay, all right, cool. Like he means it. All right. If he means it, I must follow. Like
Yeah.
if you're showing that emotion and that, want, right? That meaningfulness of the message, and how it carries and how it's conveyed to other players. Cause I could have easily just been like, all right, we're playing. But no, I decided to pause. Let's come in, reflect. What did we just work on? What do we want to implement? It would suck if we spend the next 30 minutes in this drill not doing what we just worked on. Can we do that? Yeah, yeah, we got this. Good. All right, perfect. Let's get to it.
That's like
Hold
guiding
accountable.
them.
Let's do it.
That's like guiding them into like, okay, intentions. Like I'm gonna be intentful on all my
Right.
reps. I know what I'm trying to do versus just play. I think that's
Mhm.
important.
Right.
I
That's
like
also another reason. Sorry, I think it's another thing that a lot of coaches you hear it all the time. Come on, why aren't you going for the ball? Come on,
yeah,
why aren't you doing this? Oh my god, you keep asking the same thing over and over and over again. Says a lot about the way you coach. I think it's like looking yourself in the mirror, like what were you doing before that you're setting these expectations for them that that you should not have let them get away with, but you did before whatever scenario was
yeah,
created, right?
yeah,
Um, So that tells a lot about a coach when you find them like consistently doing the same thing over and over. They're not diving for balls. Well, let's talk about how we're going about doing that
yeah.
and reflecting on it, right? Like, what's your intent behind why they should go for balls anyway? Like,
Mhm.
are you letting them know? Are you emphasizing the fact that if we let this ball go, the other team is going to win, or is it just we need to get the ball up?
Yeah.
Right?
Someone,
That's the message.
sorry, someone said to me that, I might have heard it on a podcast. I listen to a lot of stuff. I gotta remember sources better, but it was like, stop complaining. Like, tell your friends to stop you stop complaining about your partners, like, your boyfriend, girlfriend, or whatever, um, to your friends. Because while you're complaining about your partner to your friends, all they're hearing is that you have bad choices. Like, you
Correct.
picked this person, right? So everything that you're
So
saying that's
true.
wrong with them it's reflecting back on you. Like, well, why are you
Back
with
to
this
you.
person then? If they're
Absolutely.
doing all these terrible things, what does that say about you? And after I heard that, I'm like, I started hearing that with coaches talk to me about their players. Oh, they're lazy. They don't care. They, they don't want it. They don't know how to talk. They're too quiet.
Mhm.
Granted, I've been in situations where I've tried to get a player to talk super hard and they still don't talk. But maybe, and again, this is going back to put it on you.
Reflecting,
Put it
right?
on you. Is there something I could be doing more or in a different way to get that player to talk versus just putting them in this category and leaving them there like they don't work hard, they're lazy, they don't want it.
Yeah.
At the you
So let me ask you,
yeah,
sorry for you.
I was just gonna say,
How
why
did you
would
go
they be
about that?
here? I was gonna say to finish that, why would they wanna be here? Or why would they show up if there wasn't a reason for them? Like, if they weren't motivated in some way, maybe their motivations are there. So a good example, I got some players who show up to practice and it's like social hour,
Yeah.
right? So I could easily go, "Oh, they don't care about volleyball. They're here for the wrong reasons," and not really put a full focus on those kids.
Right, right,
Or
right.
I can say,
Which
"Well,
is super easy. Which is
yeah, I'm
very easy to
gonna focus on these guys. You guys don't care. I'm out of here." That's my failure threshold, right? I just give up.
yeah,
I can't do this anymore. The challenge is too hard. Or I can go, "Okay, what can I do about this?" One, this is what needs to happen because we can't keep doing this. Two, how can I use what is happening naturally for them to get them where I need them to be? So, for example, if
mhm,
you're here for social hour, maybe I can use that same friend to make you more competitive. I'm gonna I'm gonna put her on the other side of the net and give her a goal of like, hey, make sure that like try to get a tool off of this player or like
mhm.
put them head to head with each other. This person's trying to get 5 kills before this person tries to get 5 kills. And now I'm taking that like really connectedness that they have, what seems like they're just here to socialize. Like, well, they really like each other. That's a good thing.
Right.
Maybe I can use the fact that they care about each other to guide them into like, hey, if you really care about this person, you'll push her by trying to beat her every
Oh,
day.
right.
And then
Yeah,
having that
I think
healthy competitive relationship.
recognizing that as a coach and recognizing where each player's flaws
Hmm.
are I think one of the biggest things as coaches, and we can manage that through exposing it again through drills and how we set up a specific drill.
Yeah.
For example, if you talk about quiet players, I have three, four, three, four, five of them who consistently don't talk as much as they should. And I consistently catch myself, come on, like we got to talk, but that just doesn't do it.
Yeah.
How can I approach this differently? Set up a drill where only these three people can talk. They have
Yep.
six people on the court. However, only these three people can talk about what's going on. Um, Still trying to figure out like what if they consistently don't continue to talk,
Yeah.
and like what those repercussions are for that player. But for
Yeah.
the most part, it's definitely a way to put him on the spot without even having to either say anything or bring it up, but more so putting the work on them.
Yeah.
And like you said, right? Like, how can I use these weaknesses and turn them into strength? Is that, hey, a player is really good. If we could just get them to start talking a little more, just imagine how much better they. And through those drills, you start to see them start to develop their confidence, not only with the talking part, with the play and the executing, right?
Mhm.
Is that recognizing that I'm the only one that can talk. No one else can ask for the ball. I'm going to freaking yell super loud and I'm going to get this ball. And now you consistently see them getting more set. Just
Yep.
incentivizes them even more to continue to talk after, that drill's gone and we go on to the next step. Now they're
Right.
carrying that same um, um process, right? Like, okay, this drill doesn't matter. Like, it's not about talking, but it worked in the last one, and I was getting set a ton because I was yelling. I'm gonna implement it here too,
Yeah.
and do the entire drill process that you it carries over to a lot more. I guess a
Yeah.
greater aspect of the game.
I like the you mentioned, when I talk more, I get set more, because then you can just put a constraint on the setter, like only set who you hear
Who you
and
hear?
let
Yeah,
everybody hear that. Like, all right, for this drill, the setter is only going to set who they hear the loudest. And,
mhm,
so now you're taking something that they want, they want to hit more. Okay, well, you're only going to get that if you fix this other thing. Another, what we could spend a whole probably 3 hours talking about is uh, uh, punishment too, negative reinforcement. I,
right.
we talk about that all day, but a drill I used to do, I can't even call it a drill, but I had a player. This is years ago. Now I don't do that at all. Using conditioning as a motivator, Uh, but this one player wouldn't talk. They wouldn't stop. They would never stop not talking. So I was like, okay, here's what's gonna happen right now. Everyone's gonna do a wall sit until I can hear you say "I go" from outside. So they'd all do a wall sit. I went outside, and they're all just like, "Just do it, just say it, so we can be done with this." And they were just so like suffocated by this. Um,
Right.
Eventually,
So funny.
they either started crying or they did it. And like, all right, well, I eventually changed that 'cause I'm like, I don't know how healthy that is on their
Right.
mental health. I also don't
Yeah.
like the idea of having you want to do something because if you don't, you're gonna get hurt or there's gonna be punishment. Um, so, and the reason why I stopped doing that, by the way, just so we can talk about this more later, but just to give you a touch, I don't ever remember playing video games and being like, okay, like with Call of Duty, right? You're running around, you get some kills, you got 2 kills, and then you get killed. And you're just like, dang it. You get upset. You're like, okay, let's go again. You
Right,
get
right,
like, I'm gonna try to get 3 kills before I die this time. Then you get 2 again. You're like, dang it. I'm gonna keep going.
right.
You had a goal and it was just like, and when that, like, I didn't do it, it's like, let me try again. Right. And it's like, I don't think if you told me to do push-ups, one, that I would get any better at Call of Duty by doing those push-ups, nor be
Right,
more motivated to get more kills by those push-ups. So I'm like,
right,
people are naturally challenged to try or are naturally open to these challenges, or maybe they're not. But for me, that was the experience that made me change that. Was like, I don't think I want to do things more when there's a punishment. In fact, I sometimes want to do things less when there's a punishment. Like, I don't even want to play against you guys right now. If I lose,
right.
I have to do what? Like,
Yeah,
all right, I guess I'll do it. I'll do it, and I'm gonna be more tired after, and I might be more angry. So I just started like, I don't
yeah.
know how healthy this is, and also I still don't know if this is true or not. I want to believe that if you make workouts punishments, that people will have a negative feeling about working out. But at the end of
Uh-huh.
the day, we all worked out for punishments as players, and I still love going to the gym. So I don't know if there's any truth to that. I don't know if there's any science that actually says that if you use workouts for punishments. I think it's more about just like I want to create a win in your head
Right,
more. If I get through this, there's a win, not
right,
focus on if I screw up, there's a loss. So I don't
right.
know. I don't want to get stuck on it. We can talk about it for a whole next
Yeah, we definitely
podcast.
could. One of the things I have started doing is when we get into the
Okay.
last part of practice, 30 minutes, 45 minutes practice, where it's competition, right? I feel like competition has a lot to do with the result or the outcome of what the, I guess the
Uh,
repercussions of losing are. If you instill a really competitive mindset or, the tenacity of wanting to win and intensity that comes with having to win and what creates that team, um, if you can create that, early on with your team, that within itself, then the losing is a punishment.
yeah.
It becomes a punishment
Yeah.
compared to, like you said, to just, okay, I'm going to get disciplined. I'm going to have to make a run. So a lot of it, again, I think comes back to what you're coaching, how you're coaching it,
Yeah.
making them recognize like we don't want to lose and making them have that competitive drive, right? That grit of wanting to continue to push
Yeah.
forward. And I want the next one. They beat us this time, but I want the next. That
Yeah, I
being
like
said,
that.
when you lose,
I like that perspective on it more because you said, that's the punishment. And I'm like, I don't even see it as a punishment. Like for me, it's a motivator. Like, yeah, you might get mad and that might
right,
be seen as negative, but
right,
most part, it's like immediately followed by, let's try again. Like, let's play again. I want to try to beat
Yeah.
you now. I'm like even more inclined to win the second game because you won the
Mhm.
first one. So yeah, again, there's a whole lot that we could go into there. But to kind
Yeah,
of
we
reel it
definitely
back in to where we started, um, going into coaches roles,
right.
it really comes down to you were saying a lot of good things about like the way that people think and the way that we bring it in and the way that we talk before practice and the way that we talk after practice. And
Right.
me having strong commitment to this team and the way that how intentful I see the drill or how intentful I think the drill should be or how much intent I think the drill should have and then expressing that to you guys and how you guys wanting to
Yeah.
be on my level. I think that we can say that all starts with like what is the culture that you want to have, right, as a head coach, and everyone does it different, but the way that I've been doing it and I'm exploring is that we're problem solving, not just me, but we're working together.
Mhm.
Me, kids are working together. What do you guys want to get better at? What would be a
Right.
fun drill for you guys to do? What's a challenge that you guys want to try? What do we want to get done this year? And then I will do the hard work, right? I'll do the grunt work.
Right.
I will get, dirty and
Yeah.
spend hours writing out the practice plans and looking up these things and
Exactly.
trying to
I
make
think the
it
more you
better.
convey that, the more you convey that as a coach and the more you share with them, like your experience coaching them, right?
The
And
way I
letting them know
phrase it,
like,
I tell them, "I'm here to serve you guys. Take advantage of me. Don't just let me be here." Like, and I'm trying to get them to do
yeah,
that with the assistant coaches too. Take advantage of them. We're here to help you grow. We want to
yeah,
see you succeed. That's what I
yeah,
tell the assistant coaches too, because I see them as like, okay, I've been doing this for 10 years now. This is your first year. I My goal is that I can get all 10 years of what I learned into you this one season. And yeah, it's gonna
yeah,
take some experience, but I failed a lot. And you don't have to do those things. You could just do like this is what I think are best practices now. And one
right,
thing you gotta do is you gotta get out there with the kids and you gotta stop
right.
thinking like, oh, I don't want to be too intimidating or this, that, and the other. So challenging them. And just that's the kind of culture I want to build. So
I
I
think
think that's
at
the answer to your
at,
question.
at the root of when you try to implement or try to let your players know, I'm here to serve you. I'm use me, utilize me. Like I want you to ask me first. I want you to do this. Reminds me a lot of being a student, right? Like your teachers will consistently tell you, you can come to my office hours. You can come at
Yeah,
stay after class and talk to me. However, it's what goes into you even thinking about doing it. Like, is this person showing that they care about me? Because the teacher is just going to show up, do her job, and dip out, right?
right.
And as coaches, we can at times do the same. We can say, "Hey, I'm here for you. Okay, I'll see you later." I think a lot of it has to do with the way you communicate with them in regards to your intention for them
Yeah,
and sharing that in or not just making an invitation, but invitation and more. Like I want you like come after practice or yeah, come before practice, show up a little early and maybe we can talk about a couple of these things. I'm always here 30 minutes before practice. Feel free to come in. Like, oh, like damn, now he's offering like some of his time too, not just his advice. Like, okay, like I'm more inclined to do it.
yeah,
So again, you sharing that giving him the opportunity to recognize, like, I'm here for you. I'm not just here for you, but like, yes, I'm here to serve you and more.
right.
Going that extra mile, right? Like getting him like a specific piece of equipment, I think is one of the biggest things that can help an athlete out or make him know and recognize that, oh, like I can definitely come to this person. It's a trusting person. I'm definitely going to do that. Just be more
Yeah.
like, or
Like I
but
buy
again,
I bought my setters these little like finger workout
yeah, look, I
and
found,
these little balls and stuff, like just things that we can
yeah,
talking about, hey, do this at home
yeah,
when you're watching TV. And I think like those little details that show them
they
that
go a
like,
long
okay,
way, dude.
yeah,
Yeah,
they're here for me.
those it really is. And I just saw this quote that said, "Why do they call it small things the small things?" Those are the like biggest things ever. When you
Yeah,
were
for
when they
real.
like it's the small little details. Like that's not a small detail, dude. Like that means so much more than whatever the other may be.
Yeah, and I think a good example of that is like even just like a compliment. It's like
Yeah,
such a
man.
small sentence, and it's like,
Right.
is it really that hard to compliment people? Because for me, I heard someone say it like this in a video. They're like, yeah, I could run off of a compliment for like 2 weeks. Like that's so true. Like Coach Naomi yesterday was like, "Oh, I like your outfit today. It looks good." And I was like,
Ooh,
"Really?" And I walked
I'm gonna
away
wear this
like,
for the
That
next two
looks
weeks."
good." Exactly. This is a good outfit. You're right. Thank you." And sometimes it's like you said, those small things are leave the biggest impacts. So
Absolutely.
to get back to the coaches' roles, right?
Right.
For sure, starting off the season, you gotta have what does the year look like? What does the culture look like? How am I gonna make everybody around me better? How am I gonna get better? Uh, And I think that's a good ground, as well as making sure that we're creating an environment that allows for failure to be okay, and that we can get them problem solving more. So, what are some of those strategies that we can use to get them to problem solve? Now, you're at practice, you're seeing them play, you're a coach, you know that they are trying to problem solve, and you need them to be thinking for themselves and asking questions. Does that mean that your job is to just to stand off on the side and do nothing, just let practice run and see how things go? No. So I want to talk about those things that I think are okay for a coach to do. A couple of things that I think coaches should be doing. Um, at least they're things that I believe I should be doing, and I think that more people should try some of these things. The very first one that I think is a lot easy for a lot of people to relate to is using analogies to coach. They don't tell you, they don't tell the player exactly what to do, but they can give you like a ballpark of what things might want to look like. So, for example, I don't have to tell you how to hit every time, but you know, like what if I'm trying to get you to like serve a certain way, I can tell you to like high five the ball. It's like, well, everyone high fives differently. I didn't tell you how to high five. I didn't show you what to do exactly, but you in your head pictured something when I used that analogy, and it allowed you to move your body in a certain way that you understood. So I think using analogies is a great way to coach without
Huge.
telling them exactly what to do.
Yeah. I think analogies specifically, or yeah, that specifically resonate with them. I like to use a lot of the classroom analogies, being a teacher, being a student, um, hallway, right? Assignment, test,
Mm,
exam. A lot of that can capture to what happens in a volleyball game or in a
yeah,
match or in a practice, right?
yeah,
I'd like that home. I think it's something everybody can resonate with. Sibling, something
right,
it's always something to use.
yeah.
Right? Your pets, right? Like if you have a pet, how are you taking care of them? But again,
Oh,
and then if for the older athletes who may have a job or have been, have worked, I think using a job as a reference or something that they're familiar with.
yeah,
I, personally working in a kitchen before, and on the floor of a restaurant, I'm able to use a lot of serving analogies, like being a server,
mm,
cook, cook analogies, how the kitchen is ran, right? Um, the things that
yeah.
they can resonate with, because it's so easy for us to detach ourselves from a 14, 15-year-old world that we start talking about, stuff that they might not know about. Haven't-
Exactly. And that's, I think, is the most important part with analogies is a strategy analogies is in the book. They talk about using analogies in the book, how to learn to move. But I think I was already using analogies before,
Yeah,
and we also called it, I mean, analogies are analogies, but we were thinking about it as stacking, which I think is
stacking.
very
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
important when it comes to using analogies is it
Right.
needs to be something that you know that they already know about, and then take that and add a layer to it. Or, it's working really well for me right now. I'm coaching boys basketball how to play volleyball, basically. And
Nice.
it's literally like 90% basketball players right now. So I'm constantly talking about like, you know how you go up for a layup, you know how you're guarding somebody and how you feel when you're guarding, you know how when you
They're on their
shoot,
feet.
you snap your wrist, like just certain like analogies that they understand are helping them get better at this new sport that's for them. So I think that's number one. Use more analogies, stack them against things that you know that they already know. Um, and then, you should know where they're coming from is a good point to talk about too.
Right.
You need to know where they came from. Like everyone has some kind of background. You got to know what those things are. Some of those things might be the strengths and
Yep.
weaknesses that you needed to know to coach them better. So understanding where your athletes have been, kind of experiences they have, we're always asking like about, I always ask who's played soccer, who's played baseball before,
all the
especially 'cause
time.
volleyball is a later in life
Yeah,
sport versus a lot of kids play soccer, baseball, basketball younger. Um, because I know if you can throw a baseball, I can talk to you differently about arm mechanics. If you
right,
played soccer, I could talk to you differently about footwork.
right.
So, that's good to know. The
I think a
second,
lot of it also can transfer over. Sorry, can transfer over
no,
to
go on.
the differential learning, right? The way you coach.
Yeah,
I freaking love whenever I have the time. For example, today's first part of practice is going to consist of us being soccer players. We're going to learn how to like handle a ball with our right foot from sideline to sideline. Then we're going to do it with our left foot. Then we're going to do it backwards.
mhm,
And again, you detach the whole athletic piece of it, and it becomes like. And I did it with the 14th not so long ago. Our warm up was basketball, and we were learning how to dribble with our right hand, learning how to dribble with our left hand, how to um, uh, how to cross over, how to
mhm,
lay up with your left hand, how to lay up with your right hand. And it becomes a game, and they detach themselves like it becomes like so entertaining for them that they don't even recognize the coordination that they're starting to build because they're being exposed to it. One, but recognizing the strength of the weaknesses and how we can strengthen these weaknesses through simple stuff like that differential learning, right? Like, let me put you in a
yeah,
different spot. Let's play a completely different sport.
right.
Uh,
Because it's not, because the original idea was like, well, what do these things have to do with volleyball? I'm not even doing
right,
anything listed the same as
right,
volleyball, but
right,
it's problem solving, right? And it's
right,
getting better at problem
right,
solving. And you might solve a problem that you never even realized had to do with volleyball. A
right.
good example for me with basketball is sometimes you got to get in and out between the opponent, and in the game in volleyball, you might not have to, move around against an opponent, but you have to be self-aware and uh, aware of your teammates. Where am I?
Court
Where
aware,
am I
yeah.
moving around them, especially like
Right.
middle blockers? Like, dude, I don't know
Better,
players who
better.
don't transition because the setter's running
Yeah.
in, the middle's like, nah. It's like, how hard would it be just to kind of put a hand on the setter if you guys get in the way and like push him that way and you get around them,
Yeah.
right? That's a that's a problem solved. That's a problem solution that I came up with playing basketball, not even playing
Right.
volleyball.
Right.
So
Yeah. I mean, it technically the approaches to how to coach them, and that you talk about analogies using different sports is technically a physical analogy, like a physical form of an analogy that for
yeah,
volleyball specific or basketball can use a
yeah,
volleyball or baseball analogy, but a physical form of it, right?
right,
And how they go hand in hand, like not just verbal analogies, but also physical ones. You when
yeah,
we tell people when they're serving like a football player. That's a physical analogy, right? Like
yep,
you want to pretend you're a football player. Just a comparison, right? Just creates that sense of analogy
yeah. And I think
in the
I
physical
like the
form.
idea of it. Of if you were like, let's talk about actual puzzles. How bored would you get just doing the same puzzle over and over and over again? Or like I play chess, and one of the things that they do every day is there's a chess challenge, and it's like literally like the board set up a certain way. It's like, what's the next best move? And you got to
Mhm.
figure it out. What if that was the same one every single day? It's like you're not going to get any better at playing chess, solving the same problem. But
Right.
we have all these
Right.
different variations that sometimes have nothing to do with, uh, you know, I shouldn't say nothing to do with, but you get better at problem solving under random circumstances. Well, guess what? That's literally what you have to do in the game. You have to problem solve under random circumstances all the time.
Right.
So yeah, differential learning is definitely on here as one of the things we were going to talk about anyway. So it just came up organically, but we need to. I think I like doing that more at practice now too. Is like, hey, yeah, this might not be traditional volleyball, but let's do it. All right, let's see if we can play with a sheet over the net today. Let's see if we can serve receive, or let's see if we can just put our hands behind our back and get the ball to go in between our feet.
Yeah.
Things that aren't
Right. Right.
volleyball related, but they're problem solving skills that have to do with the sport.
Thought about a constraint but approach to serve receive is go through a serve receive drill, but serve receive passer, you can only pass on your right side.
Yeah,
That's
that's
the only way you can get a point. Like,
perfect.
that's the only way a point is gonna count, is if you pass on your right side, your setter makes a set and they can attack.
Yeah,
and now you're just forcing him to pass on the right side. And then you switch it left, and then you switch it. Shoot, I don't know what. 1 foot up, 1 foot off the ground.
Yeah. And then you give the servers another constraint, like you have to serve a different spot every time. You have to
Right,
make to do a short one and then a deep one. Every time you have to
right,
alternate between short and deep. And now the passers
right.
have more variation. So
I I personally feel like this became, or it was a way of me coaching like way before, exposing us to different ways to do the same task, right? But I feel like the the sports that I got to play growing up really exposed me to the variability that goes into physical movement and how we can move and what kind of moves we need in order to get what we want.
yeah,
And my thought process now as a coach is like, okay, we need to do this a little better. Well, let's think about a baseball player. Let's think about a basketball player. What was I doing when I was in this position? Or how could I relate that over to what we're doing now? And those two, in a sense, go hand in hand. For example, middles and rebounding. That's
yeah,
one of the ways that I like to teach my middles how to block is bounce something off the wall and have them go up with 2 feet. No matter where this ball is, you have to take off the 2 feet and you have to,
yeah,
toss the ball off the wall or into somewhere that they can't get it. But you make it, you know, you challenge them enough to think differently about blocking.
yeah.
And that ends up transferring over to the actual blocking skill.
I use that analogy for middle blocking for the basketball players just the other day. Like when
Yeah.
someone's passing a ball to, like I say, you're guarding and someone's passing the ball, you see that and you shuffle that way, right? It's like,
Right, right.
don't
At that
cheat,
point, you got to go block.
right? You wait till you see what happens because if you cheat, then you might get your ankles broken and then
Right, right.
that goes the other way. Uh, I want to take a pause real quick, Daniel.
And we're back.
I know. I need a second.
Fuck. Could we wrap up around 2?
I hope we wrap up before two. I'm supposed to get our DJ in 45 minutes.
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
supposed to be our DJ at two.
taking my head.
Um,
Yeah, you're definitely not making that. And it's raining.
you know,
Is it raining over by you?
it was. It's kind of
Was
stopping.
it last week or the week before? Did it snow by your place?
It did. Yeah,
Wow.
pretty cool.
Wow. Hey, wow.
Okay, we'll bring it back in.
All right.
Okay, so we kind of started just talking about differential learning and the constraints led approach without giving any context to anybody. So I want to take a second and define those things. I, I'm still,
I think you did it perfectly in that text message you sent me the other time.
yeah,
It was like really simple, straightforward. And I was like, yeah, that's what I thought it was.
it's really, yeah, so the constraints led approach like, is one of the things that we got from the book, from Rob Gray's book, How We Learn to Move. And there's a whole chapter on it. And I don't know if you can see this, but there's this like diagram
As you
of
did.
what to do. And it's like, so our goals, our goals are to destabilize existing coordination solution slash attractor or attractors. Uh, Basically what that means is some your body has these just like go-to moves, right? We talked about how we have instincts and our bodies just have these go-to moves, right? That feel comfortable. And even some like when you try to teach someone how to do something, sometimes they still go back to that thing. So we
Right.
want to figure out how to get them to stop doing that thing and do something more beneficial or I think more importantly, less harmful, right? We talked about arm swings a lot in volleyball meeting and what is the correct way so that way you don't hurt yourself or what better said, what are the ways that you shouldn't do it so that way you don't hurt yourself. So some people, I personally have had experience with athletes arching their back too much when trying to get their arm overhead and then they get lower back pain versus opening up their body to create torque. So I think that's a great example of something you want to figure out how to destabilize. Like, how can we get you to not do that? Explore other options, which is the second goal here, which is explore, encourage exploration and self-organization, which we talked about the body self-organizes. Uh, we want to encourage them to try different variations and see what happens by giving them uh, certain task constraints that we're going to talk about in a second. But something else that we want to do is we want to amplify information and invite affordances, which we were talking about earlier, which affordances I'm still trying to really understand. But what I feel like they are is it's like how we perceive things. We don't perceive them by their physical attributes, such as like we don't see 85 miles an hour. We see, can I pass this ball or do I need to get out of the way because it's going to go out? So invite affordances, invite them to see certain information better. An example of this for me is instead of when they go, coach, how do I pass better? I go, don't think about that too much right now. This is something I tried the other day. I want you just to focus on the setter. See, be looking at the ball and trying to get your arms to it, but your focus is on over there. Right. And I
Right.
think that would be a good, I'm inviting the affordance that, oh, this ball is not, can I get my arms to it? That's not the affordance that I'm looking for. I'm looking for an angle to that direction. And I feel like that's a good thing. That's a good goal because I see people like try to pass and then they like, I got my arms to the ball and then, yeah, but you swung up and the ball went that
Right.
way. So amplify the correct information and inviting the proper affordances if I'm defining affordances correctly. And then the last thing is to provide transition feedback. So, um, I'm not too sure on that one, but I think it's just
Mhm.
you're allowed to give feedback. You know, how did that
Right.
look? What could we do with that? This is what I saw. Maybe you could try something alone and give them an analogy, right? A good analogy, a good feedback I gave yesterday was like, let's talk about two things. We were doing a full court thing, and you had to hit line, right? And like you guys are, something is not clicking. That I want you guys to try to, realize that you've done this before in a different situation. And I would remind them how we play small court games where we break the court into threes. And I'm like, when I put you in this situation, you have no problem peppering.
You have unintentionally doing it.
Right. You're in a straight line, peppering. But then when I add the full court, it's really hard to hit the line. Well, you're completely capable of doing it because you do it when I limit your
Right.
space. So maybe you guys can use that in some way. Maybe you have to limit your goal of where you're able to hit the ball and your money. I don't know, but try to maybe use that to help you out. So I started
Right.
with that. Another thing that I said was another good analogy is to relating something they know is, with attacking, think about the hitting the white ball in pool. What happens? It gives you a little dot, like where to hit the ball. And if you put the dot on the left side of the ball, it goes right.
Yeah.
You put the thing on the right side, the ball goes left. So think about that with your hand trying to hit right, right? Where do you have to put your hand on the ball so that it goes right? You're not going to put it on the right side of the ball. You're going to have to put it on the left side of the ball, right? So maybe use that kind of guide to help you locate where you want to hit the ball or locate where you should put your hand so you can hit the ball
Right.
where you want it to go. So that was something that I did. So those are all the goals. Destabilize existing coordination solutions and attractors, encourage exploration and self-organization, amplify information and invite affordances, and provide transition feedback. We can get those goals by using task manipulation. These are the constraints, right?
Right.
You got individual constraints, which is, what we talked about before. We have environmental constraints and we have task constraints. I think that's what that means. And that would be like changing the equipment size, changing the space that you're allowed to play in. Like we just talked about making the court smaller
Mhm.
so you have to stay in this lane. And then maybe changing the instructions or goals or rules, like how you gave an example of you have to pass the ball on
On
your
your
right
right side.
side. That changes the rules of the game so that it forces them to destabilize an existing coordination solution of going to your left, if that was your intentions, or maybe it was just to encourage exploration of trying something new in a different situation. And then, from there you get the results. Um, this one is very focused on task manipulation, I think, right? Changing the circumstances, adding constraints that allow them or take something away. Allow them to reach a goal that you want them to do. For example, mine was the hitting the line,
Mhm.
or take something away, which was you're not allowed to pass on the left. An example from the book was they put this sort of ball under a baseball pitcher's arm to keep their arm tighter to their body longer. And they told them that when the ball was released, the ball had to go forward. So if they were to remove their arm away from their body early, the ball would fall straight down or backwards. So this was allowing, he did this to keep the kinetic chain together, which the
Right.
kinetic chain is
That
a
makes
really
sense.
important skill or a good thing to be able to manipulate as an athlete. So that was like a good thing. They took away the ability to release your arm early in accordance to the goal. So I think it's a very interesting thing to utilize as a coach. I think a lot of people already do this, but I think it's important to understand how you should be moving as a coach through that drill. And
Right. No, how to explain it more
yeah,
importantly, right? Like, what's the purpose of us learning this way?
or encouraging the exploration versus giving them answers. Because you can
Uh,
just be saying pointless reps, right? And that's the thing is some of these things are already happening by people playing threes. You're removing the amount of players, but are you giving them, are you amplifying information that allows them to get better? Or are they just playing
uh,
threes and getting better, but not as much as if you were doing a certain thing? So in your eyes, what would you do as a coach during using the constraint led approach to help them be better, thinking about all the problem solving stuff that we were already talking about?
I think one of the ways I do that already is giving specific positions. It mostly takes place during ball control or position tutoring. Don't really implement it in competitive drills.
Mm,
However, there is that time, a place and a time where, but it's more of a holistic when it's during a competitive drill or something that requires you guys to like battle it out, a team to go against each other and battle it out. It's more of like a whole team based approach to it and constraint compared to an individual constraint to a specific position or play. But when it comes to ball control, I think one of the biggest ones is having setters set specific positions only. Attackers attack to specific spot on the court only. Um, Talked about footwork, right? Limiting them to 2 steps, limiting them to 3 steps. You talked about even making it 7 steps, 8 steps.
yeah.
Even though it's not a constraint, it's just something out of their nature.
Well, really, it is a constraint. You are required to do, you have to do this
Well, right.
thing, which makes
Right.
it harder.
Um, it's pretty endless. Like listed, depending on the drill, there's just so much you can implement. Again, not only to a specific position, but to a holistic approach to a team.
Yeah.
For example, in regards to the team approach, it would be okay. You guys need to find a way that because you guys need to find a way to run your middle because the only way you can score in this drill is through your middle.
This is
So now it just incentivizes passers and ball handlers to be more precise as to what they're doing. And then, of course, getting the task done, which is running the middle and getting a point off of it, or only scoring through the middle position.
what kind of
That is
feedback are
giving,
you giving during that? Is that where you're
um,
asking more questions, or are you just kind of letting them ride it out? Do you wait till
yeah,
after the drill to
yeah,
talk about what?
I guess if there's something specific to mention that maybe isn't happening, that's when I'll step in. But again, do the holistic approach. There's less feedback compared to when it's an individual constraint that I'm giving a specific player. I
Yeah,
think when it comes to that specific player, it's a lot more implicit. So I'm very vague as to what I'm explaining because again, I don't want to give them the answer as to how you're going to accomplish. I can easily tell them you need to turn here before you hit the ball, or your hips need to be, or your shoulders need to be open for the setter, if you want to get the ball to go here. But I go, You should try getting your left foot in front of in front of you a little more. You should try getting that elbow back a little further.
mhm,
You should wait for the track the pass, track the ball all the way to the setter's hand.
yeah,
Everything that leads into the execution, I think is where most of the feedback is happening. Not the execution itself, but everything that leads into the execution. and
Yeah.
being as implicit as possible when it comes to giving them that feedback, if that constraint is in place.
I think being implicit, which is implicit would be giving them more generic information versus explicit would be really specific
Really
information.
specific. Right.
I think that
Right.
that is a, a requirement so that they can explore solutions, right? Like I'm not going to tell you exactly how to do it, but here's me pointing you in the right direction.
Right. Exactly. And that's the whole part when they get to put two and two together and be like, oh, like, and at times you see it from players, it's like, oh, I know exactly what you mean, and they end up executing the task at hand. But it's do that specific and the feedback that you're giving them, like, oh, like you can do better there. Like, were you late or were you early?
Yeah,
Asking them and not telling them, hey, you're early. Like, were you late or were you early? I think I was early. Okay, I was late. Okay, I think you were late too. Or just make them really think about a lot of what they do and why they do it.
cool.
It's important. Reflect, critical think,
Right.
critically.
So for the sake of time, let's because we both got to get out of here soon.
Yep.
Let's go through differential learning and we'll kind of end it there and do a quick
Right.
recap of everything after that and then be done. So differential learning, again, I'm still trying to get these nailed down and this is my attempt at it, but a quote that I highlighted in the book is from it's a quote in the book from Wolfgang
Shorthorn.
Schulhorn. Schulhorn.
Yeah.
You know
That
him?
guy, have you ever heard him talk?
No.
Very hard to understand him, but he is so explicit in the way he explains things.
That's
So
interesting.
explicit. It's very hard to understand at times, very confusing. But I
That's
mean,
very
you
interesting.
like you use context clues to kind of figure out what he's saying, and you're like, oh my god,
What
what's
was
he
that
on?
last name?
Shorthorn.
Schulhorn. Okay, so Wolfgang
Yeah.
Schulhorn. He said, if we want to have extraordinary performance, we need to train extraordinarily. Like that's crazy. And that's why he came up with this method, I'm sure, is and I can relate to this as an athlete that's done some like strange things, some what you might call extraordinary plays. At least I find them to
Right.
be like, how the heck did I even do that?
But I mean, I think that that word is when it's in itself ordinary. It's
Although,
when you put the extraordinary or unordinary.
yeah,
It what is it? The
the
the small
extraordinary
little
meet
word
the unordinary.
yeah, that goes before the ordinary. I think it's overlooked, but when you talk about extraordinary, it's like that's supposed to be something you're not used
Yeah,
to. Like it's supposed to be something. It's not like talking about like whoa, but I mean, that's kind of what you want the reaction to be when you make them do these things that are
yeah,
extraordinary. But out of the ordinary is what I think of when it's extraordinary. It's
yeah.
like something you're not used to.
And I think the general idea behind it is to come up with these challenges that are not normal. So that way, if you ever see something not normal in a game, you don't have to have seen it before.
You don't panic, right?
You'll panic and you're like, okay, well, what am I going to do with this? This is
Right,
new. I've never done anything like this before. Well, except you've done plenty of things that you've never done before. I
right.
like, I like this quote from about Michael Jordan. Again, I'm sorry, I don't know who said it, but, or even where I remember it from, but they said that Michael Jordan only needed to make a mistake. I don't even call it a mistake, but make an error, a mistake one time before being able to analyze it and then fix it. So if somebody tricked him somehow and took a step this way and he followed them and then they went around him the other way, he would only need to see that once to be like, okay, I can fix that the next time. So he was
Right,
extremely good at adjusting under
right.
extreme circumstances, and he was obviously extraordinary. Uh, and he trained really hard, and they were put through crazy situations. I've read Tim Grover's book, Relentlessness, and
Yeah.
also the workout book that we do plenty of, Jump Attack. And those are really hard things. Those are really hard challenges. Um, So I can see like, yeah, you got to do extraordinary things to become extraordinary.
Right.
Those are good examples of the differential learning method, but I like that idea of him only having to see something once and then, okay, I know how to adjust. Well, that's a talent. That's problem solving 101 and being really good at it. So I think differential learning is a great way to get there. I'm not sure if we actually said it right, but the the goal is, let me read it from the book. It's similar to the constraint led approach because it has goals of destabilizing the performer's existing movement solutions. So getting them to not do what they normally do, promoting exploration of the perceptual motor landscape. So basically exploring different ways that they could move their bodies to come up with the desired result. Self-organization, kind of talked on that one already, and creating variability and movement execution. So all in all, a long-winded way of saying solve the problem with what you got,
Mhm.
in my eyes. Another one is the
Right. I think a perfect
goal.
example there would be
Yeah,
like the height of the set, like variability and where you
yeah,
put it in the height of the speed
right,
of the
right,
low speed center of the set.
yep,
Attackers, you're going to be swinging way outside the fence. All right, this time it's going to be super inside and left. I mean, it's really hard to create that. Not really. I guess with experienced players, you can definitely tell each other, like, okay, this time around, I want you to set them inside and left. All right,
well,
next
not
time
only
it's
that,
super out.
that happens randomly in the game, no
Right.
matter what.
Man, and that's another thing too. Comes to the way you're coaching a specific drill is at times most of the information that goes into the drill, the entire team or everybody involved doesn't have to know about it.
Yeah,
Something I like to do with my setters. And my blockers too. Sometimes I'll tell my blockers, just go wait on the pin, go wait on the right side, wait and stay there. I want to see if that outside hooter is actually looking over at the block. Why? Because today during position tutoring, we worked on our attackers looking on the other side of the net before they attack. So now we're gonna take a peek here, and hopefully by you standing there, she's gonna cut this. She's gonna cut to go hard court or yeah, cross court angle.
yeah,
Uh, and you start to read, and you start to, again, you stop the play after it's executed, and you ask, God, like, why did you go down the line? You had two
yeah,
blockers there. Were you looking? Oh, I did see him, but I didn't. Like, okay, well, no, like you create these scenarios for them. That is differential learning in regards to what they're doing, and in a sense, too, a constraint led approach. By constraining the blockers just to be there instead of transitioning all the way. But I like to do that a lot with my setters, is giving them certain people to set specific moments.
yeah,
Telling them when to dump, I think, is one of them, and where to dump. Um, and yeah, I think free ball had a lot to do with that too, like practicing free ball to redo this. Surprisingly enough, dude, this week I found out was my teams are terrible at free ball. Free ball passing over the net. Like we have to give a free ball over. Like, well, we suck at this.
right. Put it into the right spot aggressively.
And everybody agreed, dude. We brought it back into the home, and I'm like, what did you guys think about? The kid was failing goes, we suck at free ball passing over the ball, or we put like a or passing the ball over on a free ball situation. I'm like,
Mm,
like you also saw that, you recognized that too. It wasn't even part of the drill, but something that was exposed on our end. They're like, yeah, and I did recognize the need because I did recognize, or I did know that if you put the ball lower and serve super high, they have a lot of trouble passing it to target. I'm like, good, like yeah, that's it, that's the goal. Like just because it's a free ball doesn't have to be yeah, to be easy. It can still be an attack, you know,
yeah,
still be considered an attack in a sense.
that's a great example.
Right.
I'm gonna finish by reading this. I don't think I understand the difference between constraint led approach and differential learning enough to explain it well.
Right.
But
I think it's a lot easier understood when it's being done.
I think constraints is like taking the game as it is and putting a constraint on it. So that way it's more challenging, like making the court smaller versus differential learning might be, let's play, uh, I don't know, let's play
Yeah.
with the
Oh,
ball, but that could even
right.
be straight, right? Like changing the size of
Right.
the
Yeah.
ball,
Yeah. Yeah.
the volleyball. Um, or maybe like you can only use one arm instead
Mhm.
of two arms, but the way that they describe it is using a differential learning approach, does not involve trying to identify key task constraints and guide learning by manipulating them. Instead, it attempts to destabilize the existing movement solution by amplifying the natural fluctuations in the system through the addition of uh, basically random randomness in the practice environment. Like, so could that be the way I hear that is like maybe make them play left-handed today,
Hmm. Oh yeah, specific, maybe not the whole practice, but for that
but
specific drill,
for a
right?
drill you have to play left-handed or
Hmm.
um face the back wall,
Yeah, I think
and then
different.
when I blow the whistle turn around,
Yeah,
or start on the
yeah,
floor, start laying down, and then get up when the ball is served. Just like things that are really hard.
right.
So hopefully we could dive into the differences more next time. But it's definitely, I think you can understand enough from what we said that we're
Absolutely.
trying to add challenges to the practice to allow
Yeah,
problem solving to become more instinctual.
absolutely. Well,
So
I want to challenge you for the
okay,
next time we meet to try to find ways to implement both of them in your practice and take some notes on it or some mental notes, and let's have some feedback to come back and like discuss how it worked, what you said, what you didn't
yeah,
say, what was implied, how did the players respond to it, was it good, was it bad? Because a lot of these constraints that you add or, you try to implement a lot of these differences in the way that you're teaching a lot of these things, a lot of the time they don't end up going the way you want them to.
mhm,
Given that, some players are less experienced than others, and I think experience has a lot to do with it. Talk about athleticism. Certain players can't do a lot of things other players can do, just let alone because of athleticism. So yeah, I want to challenge you to try that with your team. I like to do it during the ball control portion of
yeah,
my practices. So let me know how that goes.
yeah, for sure. And again, I think we definitely have the constraint-led approach down way more than differential learning because we do
Hmm.
things like put the rope across the antennas to give
Yeah,
them you have to serve it low between
that
the net and this spot, putting out,
that
places
bit me
you're
in
not allowed to
that
hit.
that came back and bit me in the butt earlier this season with the 14. Before the week before the tournament, I set up that rope across, and mind you, this the tournament before that, we were the best serving and passing serving team. Just a great. We had a great serving day. Everybody was making sure, you know, we did really well from the back line. And going into this tournament, I decided, we can serve tougher. We can be better servers. We were already good, but I was like, we can push to be better. Let's put the string up. And now I'm having the girls and I'm telling them, hey, our goal is to try to get this ball right over or right in between. Find the sweet spot. Find the sweet spot. Going into the tournament, let me ask you, what do you think happened?
You had more serving errors than you would have liked
What kind of serving errors?
into the net.
Into the freaking net. Consistent balls going into the net.
Hmm.
I was like, geez, maybe that wasn't the best idea coming into a tournament or period. Sometimes I guess you, as the coach, got to sit back and be like, this is as good as it's going to get for now. It's just the way again, it's giving us results and the results that we
Yeah.
want. Um, like when you implement these things, also have to do a lot with where you are, with your team. I
Yeah,
think that's also important to take.
maybe they weren't as consistent with the other type of serving yet, or confident in their ability yet, to
Right.
where they feel
Right.
comfortable moving
Yeah.
into
And you can just
next
imagine,
three.
coach telling you, we practice this all week, we better implement it. And you back there sitting on the back line, like, okay, find a sweet
Yeah,
spot.
maybe
Put,
that's what I was thinking might have been it more than you doing that is
right.
making like that, like, "Okay,
The
now let's do
emphasis.
it. Let's do it today,"
Yeah.
versus being like, "Hey, if you feel confident, and let's try it, but remember the
Yeah.
ultimate goal is
Yeah.
put the ball in first, aggressive second."
I definitely do think I was definitely pushing for that right over the tape, right over the tape. And they got caught up on it.
Yeah, they just hadn't built enough confidence in that yet. Hey, that's how we live and learn though, right? And we
It is, dude.
just
All
to
of
the
it.
next one.
It's the best part of it. I think another important note to kind of leave off on is the level of coaching that you coach at. I think a lot of this can either be easier or it can be harder depending on what level you're coaching at. This
Yeah,
is from anywhere from an 11, 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds to pretty collegiate athletes.
yeah.
And I personally think, and a lot of people think differently, that the higher you get to coach, I think it doesn't become easier, but a lot of the things you want to implement do.
Mm.
A lot of the things you foresee, like you can challenge players a whole lot more at the experience level compared to the younger or to the younger level. How you
Yes.
approach a lot of these constraints and differential learning um, can be significant if you don't do it right, and
I,
I think it can be a downside, and it can turn into a weakness.
they actually say that about differential learning, that it's more for adults because it's to add variability, and
Hmm.
there's less variability in adults and there's more organic o-
Yeah,
variability with kids. There's more like random situations that
yeah,
happen for
there
them
is.
versus at the adult, or I should say higher skill level of things. So we'll dive into that more um,
Sound good.
as we keep studying. But I think this was a great first day to kind of put some of these things on the table. Let's go over real quick what we talked about. So if you are just like want to only listen to this part, what we talked about was to be a good problem solver, you got to be adaptable. You got to be able to be put in different situations and change your approach to doing that skill, so that way you find the appropriate solution to the goal, which might be, for example, hitting the ball down the line. But what if you get caught inside, or you just covered the off, you were the off blocker, and now you got to get out to take that approach? Can you be put in different circumstances and still find find the same solution?
Mhm.
We have to be good at perceiving, and we learned a word, affordances, which is
I think you leave that goes into depth on the 42.
okay.
It explains it really well. And
Okay.
shows you examples.
Were we close?
Yeah, no, we were absolutely close. I'll give
Okay.
you the affordance in essence is an action possibility and the relation between the user and an object.
I think,
So
yeah,
everything in
absolute
between the
possibility.
ball and me.
Right. That's perfect. So that
Yeah,
which it needs to be true perception, because I could be looking at the ball, but if I'm only thinking about the ball, I might just pass it straight up. But if I'm aware of the ball, its trajectory, my target,
right,
it's gonna make me act in a different way than just focusing on one of those variables. So
right.
your overall perception of the game in every way needs to be explored. Remember that you're going to have a different capability and level of athleticism every day. And you should train those things, but you should also be aware when you're not your most athletic, you might be tired, you might be having a bad day, and you should still be able to problem solve while not being at your best. But the more capable you are, the more options you're going to have as solutions. So that's a good thing, is to be athletic and genetically gifted, but for those of us that can't do anything about it, right? I didn't let being a smaller volleyball player stop me. I'm going to increase my athleticism. I'm
Yep.
going to start jumping higher, become faster or smarter. We have to be more willing to accept challenges and increase our failure thresholds. Got to be okay with making mistakes. That's how we grow. We got to be open to being challenged. And in fact, we got to welcome it, because challenges are what push us to grow. We got to be
Exactly.
willing to be team focused and open to our teammates helping us where we lack. And we have to understand that sometimes the solution might be taking me out or putting it all on my back. I might have to adjust to help others, and be open to the feedback of others, um, and develop the kind of person that you are through teaching yourself what it means to be not necessarily a good person, but you want to be a more positive person. You want to be, again, thinking of failure as a positive learning experience, although it might suck,
Yep.
you're going to grow from it. So always improving yourself as a person. And then we I talked about a couple of things when it came to the coach's role in this thing, and really making sure that as a head coach that you're bought in 100%. If you expect your team to be bought in, including your assistant coaches, it's very important to build that team culture at the beginning of the year and really define what we're going to do this year, and make sure that there's a cohesive working environment, not just coach says, and I got to do what coach says, or I'm not going to
Right,
play. We're
right.
all involved in this developmental process, and we all have a shared goal. and we're constantly pushing each other. Players are pushing the head coach to be better. The head coach is pushing the assistant coaches to be better, and vice versa. And we're all on the same page and teaching the same things. And that's the best way to start. We talked about how we should use analogies instead of very specific, detailed ways of coaching. Use analogies because they can be more implicit, which means you're giving them a general sense that they can
Yeah.
still self discover within versus explicit of giving them the very detailed exact way that you think they should do it, which we
Right.
have talked about being not very helpful when it comes to problem solving different situations. We want to encourage discovery at practice, which means we need to be okay with them failing at practice. We have to be okay with failure at practice, especially understanding that we're challenging them with things that are supposed to be hard for them. And we got to encourage them to find solutions, even if they are failing. And it can't show on our face that we're upset if they're failing. We want to use constraints at practice. We mentioned some, such as making the court smaller, giving them specific instructions that change the roles of the game, such as you have to
Right.
pass it on your right side, or putting physical constraints on them, such as putting a ball under their arm in baseball, right? We can add individual constraints, we can add time constraints, court
Right.
constraint, uh, to make things more challenging and guide them towards a result that we're looking for. And if there's not enough variability, again, we didn't touch on this enough because I don't think we have a good enough understanding on it right now, but the differential learning of putting them through more variations of problem solving because it might help them solve something that's kind of hard in a situation that they didn't see coming. I think that's what that means. And I think that's a great thing. Overall, be open to learning, be open to getting your players to ask you more questions and give more feedback and us talk less and letting it be more of a self-discovery process where we're more of the guide
Right.
versus the source of all the information, specific information. You got anything else? Oh, what the last thing that I forgot is that 10-second rule of making sure that they're reflecting. We talked about that when it comes to perception, not just
Stopping and thinking.
before a play
Yeah.
and during a play, but after the play. What just happened? And was I aware of all the different variables? Could I have done something differently there? Because now you're reflecting and problem solving after the fact if you didn't do it properly during the repetition. So that would be the last thing that I had on my notes here. Is there anything that you think we should add past that?
Yeah, from a much, I guess, broader perspective, in the at being coaches and instructors. Again, I think the intention you have for your players, how you convey messages, how you talk to your players, when you talk to your players, what you were talking to your players about, has a lot to do with the outcome that you want as a coach. So, just really prioritizing the way you communicate with your players and what your intentions are for them. The mind tends to work and tends to retain and does retain information a lot more and when you are enjoying what you're doing. So if you can make practices enjoyable and fun, kids are more likely to retain the information you're coaching them. So as long as you continue to create that environment for them, do what you say, how you say it, and what you make them do, I think the positive outcomes will speak for themselves.
Right. I think it's very good. And the last thing, just because I forgot this one, is you're challenging me to what are the ways that I could implement constraint-led approach and the differential learning styles into practice this week, which is my way of saying like you can apply these constraints and these tactics of learning on yourself as a coach. Challenge
Yeah.
yourself,
Yeah.
get better, right?
Absolutely.
Can you
Yeah.
put certain constraints on yourself to be better? I got to stop talking so much. Like that's a constraint for this to work. I have to stop talking so much. So maybe today I'm going to talk less and I'm going to like yesterday I let two of the 18th players, hey, I've been teaching them this stuff. Like, no, show me what you think we're learning now by you making the practice plan. What should we do today? What does that look like? And then I want you guys to describe to the players what the goals are without telling them exactly how to do it. Just so you guys understand it. So that was a challenge
Awesome.
for me. That was a constraint trying to teach without teaching
Yeah.
through the athletes. And that was
Awesome.
so push yourself at the end of the day. We're here to grow too which is the whole point of
Exactly.
this
Yeah,
podcast.
and it's so easy to detach yourself from their shoes, and because especially if, or again, don't detach yourself from what you're trying to create. You are technically one of them. You just have a little bit of leverage because you have the label of it.
Exactly.
Never, very easy fall into the trap of putting yourself on that pedestal and thinking you're more than them. The more you do the stuff that they're doing and expose yourself to doing a lot of the dirty work, shagging balls for them, getting down and dirty in their workouts, I think that
Mhm.
speaks for itself and then working to the outcome that you want the team to and the way they respond to your coach.
Beautifully said. All right. With that, that ends our first episode of thought process.
Nice, man. Let me know how that challenge goes.
Okay.
I'll definitely be doing the same. I'll let you know how that goes with both my 16, 14.
All right. I'll see you later, Daniel.
I mean,
I didn't even like say like who we are. Oh, Daniel. I'm
nobody
Josh.
knows who you are.
So yeah, the people that are gonna watch this are gonna know who we are. All
Exactly.
right. I'll see you later.
All right, see you, bro.
Bye.